Welcome once again to the chat room. Nice to have your company. Today, the topic is addiction. Now, when I say that, your reaction might be, well, this is not really relevant to me. Well, either it is, or one day it will be. Because even if you don't end up with some problem that's to do with addiction, you'll know someone who has. And there's a good chance that if you don't know what it's about and how it functions, you'll put your foot in it, say the wrong thing, or you'll feel really awkward and think, I don't know what to say to this person. So we're going to talk about addiction today with the Dean of Sydney, Phillip Jensen. Phillip, it's a complex problem, isn't it?
A lot of people get addicted to things they're not expecting to be addicted to either.
Such as?
Overeating.
Right. Because all of us eat.
Yeah,
but eating
I'm addicted to eating. I never miss a meal.
But you're not...
But I'm not an addict.
Right.
But you can be addicted to overeating, and to gluttony if you like.
Right.
Or on the other side, to purging as well.
So it's not just alcohol, it's not just drugs, it can be behaviour. In fact, it's a very complex area, isn't it? It's a complex thing, addiction.
It is. It's very hard to define.
Right.
And so it depends where you're coming from as to where your definition is working. So if you're a drug and alcohol person, you'll be looking for the chemical definition. Right. But there are behavioural addictions. And so if you're coming from a psychological point, you know, your pornography can be an addiction, which is a behavioural one to which the chemist will say, oh no, but it affects your brain chemistry. And
yes.
And so actually defining it's hard.
Well, there's a definition I've got here which says a definition is a recurring compulsion by an individual to engage in some specific activity despite its harmful consequences.
That's a good one. Give it to us in bits.
Okay, it's a recurring compulsion.
Yes.
So it's not going to go away.
It's a compulsive behaviour.
Yes.
It's not just behaviour. It's a compulsive...
They can't not do it.
Can't not do it. So you can't go to bed without watching the television.
Right. There are people addicted to
the news.
Well, I was going to say to computers. There was someone I was at a dinner party with once, and she got up and she went to go and do something. I don't know, it was Facebook or emails or whatever. Couldn't leave it alone for more than 20 minutes.
Can't go on holidays without it.
Yes.
You know, I've got to keep checking my emails all the time, even while I'm on holidays. That's an addictive pattern.
So it's a compulsive
behaviour.
Recurs. It's in an individual fairly obviously. Yeah. It's a specific activity.
Yes, it's not just generally. You can talk about an addictive personality, but
it'll show up in something.
It'll show up in something that you're doing. Yes,
and they do it despite its harmful consequences. Yeah. That's the puzzler, because it is damaging.
Yes, but without the negativity, I don't think the definition's right.
Right.
So I'm addicted to eating, but that's not harmful. That's actually a good thing. Unless you want to get rid of me. That's a good thing. And I'm addicted to breathing. There's a whole range of things in that sense. Now, addiction has within it the concept that this is harmful. And so I am compulsively doing something. I don't have control in a sense. I'm losing my control. I'm becoming enslaved to. I'm just compulsively doing something which is harmful to me.
So in the case of the alcoholic, it's obvious because they're blotto, they the lost weekend kind of experience. Yeah. But in the case of other people like addictive behaviours, they lose control of what they do with their day and their time, and they can't not do this thing.
That's right. I mean, a very common one is watching television. So often people turn television off saying, well, there was nothing on tonight, and I don't know why I wasted the last 3 hours.
And you say, what did you watch? And they say, television. They didn't watch programs, they watched television.
And then tomorrow night they'll turn it on again.
Right.
And it's no better. And week after week they're turning it on, and week after week they're turning it off, saying, well, that was a waste of time.
So the amount of damage being done might vary, because there could be really serious physical damage being done by the alcoholic.
Yes.
In the case of someone addicted to pornography, there could be real damage being done to relationships.
Yes, it is, yes. And to your own mindset and view of other people, and to your own sexuality. Because there comes in pornography the inability to enjoy loving sexuality, because it always has to be fitting into the mindset and the pattern of
whatever the fantasy is.
Yeah, whatever the fantasies are involved.
So it's not always chemical, it can be behavioural, it can cover a range of things, but is the key the fact that there's a loss of self-control?
Well, that's one of the keys to it, that it becomes this compulsion, this I've got to do it, I need to do it each day or each week or whatever it is, or how often, that I can't, I decide not to.
Right.
But I go back to it again.
How hard is it to recognise?
It's very hard to recognise, especially when you're in it. What you recognise is the symptom rather than the disease. That is, you recognise the damage you've just done.
Right.
Now, if the damage is minimal, I just wasted 3 hours, I don't recognise it. The fact that I waste 3 hours every night of the week for a year,
Right.
someone has to sit me down and explain that, because all I notice is the 3 hours I missed tonight.
And with some people, I'm thinking now of young people who become addicted to game playing.
Yes.
It
Can
feels
be
like a good thing at the time. I'm getting up to another level in the game.
Yeah.
I'm competing online with those other people. I'm winning. Nothing doesn't feel negative.
And I get excited about it, and my excitement about it means that I go through the rest of the day looking forward to when I'll be able to get there.
Yes.
And
So
even make social decisions. I've got to leave dinner now because the game's on.
Yes, yes.
Now, sometimes that's a good thing. Something is on television or something on the game that you want to see. But when you keep doing it, when you set your social program around this activity,
It's taken control.
it's taking control of you.
Right.
Now, most people don't see their addiction until the damage. Right? So, the easy one is the drug addict. You reach the bottom and you look and you say, my life's a complete shambles now. I've lost my family, my job, my home, my health. But it is extraordinary, the capacity for the human mind to lie to itself.
Yes.
And so the alcoholics famously are in denial.
There's a friend who actually was persuaded by his wife to go to an AA meeting, and he walked out afterward and said, I don't want to do that. Now, in other words, he was almost recognising the problem, but he didn't want to fix the problem. I mean, that's hard, isn't it?
Very hard. And sometimes they walk out saying, that's not me.
I'm not like that.
I'm not like that.
Yes.
And you look around and you say, I don't dress like them, or I don't behave like them, etc. But of course, the thing that unites an alcoholics group is you are just like them in the addiction.
Is AA and the 12-step program a good model for helping people understand this? I mean, they insist that you sit there and you say, I'm John, I'm an alcoholic. Is there a good model there?
There is a good model in it. There's lots of good things in AA, and even if AA was imperfect, which it is, on lots of fronts, it's one of the best things going. It's all very well for people to criticise AA, but the number of alternative systems or counsellings or medical programs, etc., which actually get people sober, very few.
Yes.
AA is better than most, even though it's only those who take AA seriously and go through the 12 steps in recovery properly that don't become cured. You're never cured of being an addict, but learn to manage their addiction, learn to move into recovery. Just going to AA meetings doesn't do it.
I've worked with alcoholics and they say to me, I'm an alcoholic. I'm a sober alcoholic, but I'm an alcoholic.
Yes. Now, I'm glad they do in one sense, because it's a denial of their denials. It's a recognition of reality.
Yes, yes.
But you'd like them to say something else about their self-identity. I'm a Christian.
Yes.
Alcoholic.
Right. So in other words, it becomes the defining central pillar of who they are.
Within AA it does.
Right.
That, whatever else I am an alcoholic. That's a serious thing, but they are other things. They are the children of God. They can be Christians, and they can, be a husband, be a father. And so when people say, who are you or what are you, you can say, I'm a journalist.
Yes.
But that's a very poor description of you as a human being.
Yep.
Excuse me saying that about journalism. I have great love and respect. No, I don't.
I've never had a proper job. It's all right. I don't mind.
But there's more to it than that. And so, but to say I'm an alcoholic, even to say I'm an alcoholic in recovery,
yes,
or a sober alcoholic,
is too limiting a definition of a complex person.
Of a person, yes, I think.
It is doing this business of recognising reality, and that might be the really hard step. Not
Yes.
just for the addict, even for people around them. If their
Yes.
if their behaviour is not socially destructive, it might even be hard for their family and friends to know what's going on here as addiction.
That's right. So one man I know used to come home and drink himself to sleep each night. His wife didn't like it, in a sense, because in the morning she'd wake up and find him in the study on the floor. But he went to work every day. He held down a job. No one knew. No one saw him as an alcoholic. When he took a drink from time to time at work, no one said, oh, well, that man's an alcoholic. But every night, come 10 o'clock,
He was blotto.
Yeah, well, he just kept on drinking until he fell asleep wherever he was in the house.
Mm.
And so his wife knew he was an alcoholic, but he didn't. He wouldn't accept that he was.
And I'm thinking of that young woman at the dinner party I was at who had to get up and leave the dinner party table to go on the computer and do something online. I mean, my wife and I driving home talked about it, but you wonder whether she's recognising what's going on.
No, I strongly doubt whether she is. And I remember going to a netball grand final with my daughter, who was in it, and one of the other fathers on the other side, he had his mobile phone the whole time. It was the early days of mobile phones, but the whole time he was watching the mobile phone. He hardly watched any of his daughter's netball game. Now, that's a workaholic.
Yes, yes. So
And that's an
workaholism is not just a joke word, it's a real thing.
Oh, it's a real thing. It's a very real thing. I mean, I know the man who on his deathbed was still trading shares. An hour before he died, he was still trading. And you think,
You'll never collect the dividends, mate.
why? What is the point?
Yes.
And the woman whose husband had a heart attack. And she was rung at work, and she said, where is he? In intensive care. How is he? Well, he's unconscious. We don't know how it's going. Well, ring me up if he wakes up. And she just kept working for 3 days.
So what sort of behaviour is that? Is it my sense of self-worth comes out of my work? What is it?
Yes, it certainly is that. My sense of significance. I mean, it was a high-flying job. I can't see it as a sense of security that she's after. But who she is as a person is, I can't remember what it was. It was a lawyer or an accountant or something else. But, that's who I am. And my husband's near death is an irrelevance.
So the first breakthrough is recognising the reality. That's got to be step one.
That is a huge one, yes.
Yep.
Now, part of the problem in it is it's a combination of social things, psychological things, and chemical, and they all interplay. Because more and more we're seeing the brain, which is an incredible thing, a brain. Even the little ones that you and I have, still incredible. See, we're finding with stroke victims, etc., that new neural linkages can be developed through behaviour. So your behaviour can change your brain structures.
And the bits of the brain that are still alive can take over the functions of the bits that have died.
And so you can have a possible, the amount I don't know about this subject is massive, but then I'm with the rest of humanity in not knowing. But there can be predispositions towards certain addictive behaviour, which can be psychological or social predispositions, but it could be chemical.
Could be inherited. I mean,
Could be
any
inherited.
of these things. So it's enormously complex. In that
Very
sense.
complex. But one of the things is behaviour changes brain chemistry.
So they are linked together more intimately than we understand.
More than anybody. And so you can actually do certain things that will so change your brain chemistry that after a while you get a need for doing these things. So joggers and their endorphin high.
Yes.
After a while they need to go running to get the endorphin because they get hooked on this feeling of euphoria that comes in after 10 or 15 miles of jogging.
So recognising reality is the first big step. Maybe the next one is actually having a motivation to do something about it, actually wanting it to change.
Yes. Now, often that comes out of the pain that you're causing, more often out of the family who is being pained by your behaviour. But yes, till there's a motivational change, it's very hard to see any addictive behaviour changes.
So you've got to want to change it.
Yeah.
Now, when we as Christians face this kind of thing, can it be a bigger problem for someone who is a Christian, genuinely born-again, Bible-believing Christian, who discovers they've been caught up in some addiction? Can it be harder for them? Because do they feel guiltier?
Well, it's easier and harder.
Right.
That is, the non-Christian world loves being non-judgmental. And hey, if you want to smoke, that's your business. It's not for me to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. Christians they see as being judgmental. We see it as being loving. I see you smoking and I say, Kel, this is not good for you. What can we do to help you? So at one level it's easier for us because we have a little bit more motivation. Personally, we want to do the right thing. Socially, we're encouraged to do the right thing. But it also can be harder because you can say, okay, I'll give up smoking. But if you're chemically addicted to smoking...
That's a battle.
That's a battle. That's a really big battle. And you go into Christian circles and there's no smoking here. By and large, the drug addict, the alcoholic, the person who's caught up in pornography, they are deep in guilt and shame already. They feel really bad about themselves. And this is the lever which gets them down into their addiction. Because having just watched pornography, I feel really bad about myself. Or having just shot up again, I feel really bad. Once I get out of it, I feel really rotten. And so I'm not going to do that again. And I continue to feel rotten. I feel worse. Until in the end, I'll do it again, because when I'm doing it is the only time I feel good.
And the only person who's actually enjoying this is the person who's counting the money, because they're flogging.
That's right.
The drugs, the pornography, the alcohol, the whatever.
And every time I do it, I need more just to feel as good as I did last time. Now, alcoholic in particular is a progressive disease.
Downward spiral.
Downward spiral, because you always need more alcohol to feel as good as you did last time. And between your sobering up and the next drink, you feel bad. And once you start drinking, you start to feel good again. But of course, you'll need more to get there.
And you'll feel worse.
And
the bottoms will feel worse, and you need more to get to the top.
That's right. And so it's a downward feedback that happens. Now, when Christians come along and say, "Oh, that's really dreadful," well, they know they are. That's the one thing what they need is to be heard that grace of God can bring forgiveness and healing. That we can actually help, that God forgives, God understands.
And has the power to help.
And has the power to help. And therefore repentance is worthwhile, because you are not locked in forever. Yep. We can break this cycle. But if you've got no hope of breaking the cycle, because there's no God who can help you, if you've got no possibility of ever improving, you feel absolutely rotten about yourself, and to have the preacher come and say, you're really rotten, doesn't help.
So we as Christians, if we encounter addictive behaviour, don't always say and do helpful things, do we?
No, sometimes we do very unhelpful things.
Right. So
sometimes people say, "Oh, well, I gave up smoking. What's your problem?"
Yes.
Now, there's that book by, I can't think of his name, but The Tipping Point.
Oh, Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you have that, yes. It's an interesting book, because there's a long chapter on smoking. And here's my information about smoking, so if it's wrong, blame him. But basically he's saying there are different levels of addictive predisposition amongst people. So for some people, one cigarette, they're hooked. Other people, they can be smoking 20 a day and can give up when they want it.
I did a series on national television some years ago in which we tested different methods of quitting smoking. We got a whole lot of audience people to come into the studio and followed them for the next month. And I think we used 4 or 5 different methods of quitting. They all worked. Yes. They all worked for different people, and they all produced much the same results.
Yes.
They were giving different people different, and some people said this is not working for me and switched to a different program.
Yes.
So different things work for different people, and that sort of sweeping assumption of it's all the same is just rubbish.
That's right.
So what do we as Christians need to say and do when we are with someone who's an addict? How can we be helpful rather than simply regarding them as weak or something?
Well, we've got to differentiate between what is right, wrong behaviour and what is unhelpful behaviour. So, smoking cigarettes is unhelpful, but it's not sinful. Whereas getting drunk is sinful. So we mustn't jump down everybody's throat just because there's behaviour that is harmful that we would want to help them deal with. Secondly, we've got to watch out that the sinful ones, we recognise the difference between doing what is wrong and being an addict to a compulsive behaviour over which you are losing your control.
Choosing on each occasion to do what is wrong. No. They're now in the grip of something.
In the grip of something. That really needs a different help. See, a lovely passage in Galatians 6. If anybody falls into a sin, let those who are spiritual amongst you go and seek to restore him in gentleness, looking to yourself, lest you too be tempted.
Right.
Now, we sometimes don't come in the gentleness. We come with a harsh rebuke, rather than saying, brother, what is the problem you have with this
or even
behaviour?
That rather worse thing of just being superior.
Oh, yes.
Which is horrible.
And the addict always feels you are morally superior, because the addict nearly always knows they're morally inferior.
Right.
Because they understand, I can't do this. I'm a failure. And so we really have to be very gentle with addicts on any behavioural issue. And we've got to realise there, but for the grace of God go I. I must never think, oh, well, I would never be like that. Because that's just not true. And so there, but for the grace of God go I. So how can I help you with the problem that you have? And not just assume you are high-handedly rejecting God and choosing to do something sinful.
Right. So I don't make that assumption. Instead, I say to you, how can I help?
Yeah, that's right.
What role does prayer play in this? Because there will always be some dear sweet souls who say, just pray about it, it'll go away.
Well, God in His mercy can remove all kinds of things from us. And so I could never say that that God couldn't answer our prayer by taking something straight away. And secondly, God is the mighty one who can change us. So I never can say, I'm an addict, there's nothing I can do about it. I need to say, I'm an addict, there's nothing I can do about it, but God can change me. And so using the first part of AA's programs is to recognise a higher power. Now, I think that's pretty wet, a higher power.
Better to recognise the God who is there.
The God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, rather than some mystic thing that I'm going to make up.
Yep.
But the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, by the power of His Spirit, can change anybody of any behaviour. And so prayer is really important that we need to address. And prayer alone can change us, but there's no promise in the Scriptures that prayer alone will change us. And there's every encouragement to take action on things and to be changed.
So pray like mad and be as practical as possible.
Yeah, we've got to be practical as well.
There's an organisation you and I know which uses the 12-step program Christianly.
Yes.
Called Overcomers Outreach. And we'll put the web address of Overcomers Outreach at the end of the program. So if this sounds interesting to you, look then, have a pen, jot it down, go to their website, you'll find out more. It's doing really good work.
Oh, it's terrific. I'm glad you mentioned it because it really is doing terrific work. It's a kind of bridge program between the 12-step programs, and AA was the founding one, but there are others. But they have become, in a sense, godless, even though they've got God in their system. So in Australia here, they can't pray the Lord's Prayer or anything like that. I understand in America they still do, but it's become secularised in a dreadful way. And the church, which has lots of people with these problems, but doesn't talk about it very much, and has the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, OO sits between those two, helping Christians deal with their addictions, helping those who are trying to deal with addictions through the 12-step programs
Discover Christ.
Discover Christ.
Yeah.
And so it stands between the two, and I think it's a terrific program.
So have a look at the website, Overcomers Outreach, OO, which is a nice sort of twist on AA. Have a look at that, have a look at the website, find out more about it, and it may well be that that's useful for you or someone you know or your church or whatever. Yep. The more people plug into it, the better.
Sure,
in
absolutely.
Effect. Talk to me for a moment about the families of addicts, because they can go through really hard times, can't
dreadful
they?
time. It's a dreadful time. Some get into that codependency where they spend their time and their life almost needing the addict to fall over because their life's job is to pick up the addict.
Right.
And so
they become addicted to supporting the addict.
To supporting the addict, which is dreadful. Because how do you let your teenager, your 20-year-old, your 30-year-old, go through the troubles with the police, go through the troubles because they're addicted to heroin or marijuana or whatever it might be? And so they keep bailing them out, which in the long run doesn't actually help them because it teaches them never to take responsibility for their behaviour. So, but letting them take responsibility for their behaviour when their behaviour is so self-damaging is very difficult. Of course, there are also the terrible problems, the gamblers. The children never know whether they're going to have furniture in their house or not. I mean, one gambler I know, the family came home, every time they opened the door, they either had brand new furniture because he just won, or they had no furniture because it had all been repossessed. And the insecurity with which those children were raised, you can't overcome the damage that was done to them by this man's gambling. Gambling is one of the worst addictions that are available because there's no end. An alcoholic in the end falls down drunk and he's unconscious, but the gambler can keep gambling and lose everything and then borrow and then fall a prey to the loan sharks from whom they've borrowed. It's a dreadful addiction and it damages the family every time.
So the Christian community, the local Christian church, the local Christian family needs to be aware of a family in their midst, if they're like that, providing support, don't they?
Yes.
Helping.
Because Christian living is different, we sometimes naively assume that no one has this problem in our church.
Right.
When it's just not true. For many of us, especially middle class, educated people, we're really good at covering up the problem.
Putting the mask on.
Oh yes, yeah. It's the miracle of the church parking lot, you know, where
Yes.
the fights are on in the car in the family, and you arrive in the church parking lot.
You're suddenly all holy.
You get out of the car and your family is all together and lovely and wonderful until you get back in the car and continue the fight on the way home.
And how important can Christian fellowship be for the addict themselves? I mean, is it important that they're part of our home prayer and Bible study groups and we know who they are and we care for them? Can that help?
It's terrifically important and helpful, but sadly, in some ways the AA movement, and certainly gladly the OO movement, is slightly better at it than we are, because rarely will Christians spend the time to actually express what their genuine problems are in a Bible study group. And that really undermines the quality of what we can do in Bible studies.
And a mutual friend of ours says, people who are not addicts don't understand.
No. So we go around the group asking for prayer points. Well, that's a waste of time. I could write those prayer points down on the sheet of paper before you go around and asking. Because if it's a student group, help me with my study, get my essay in on time.
Yes.
You know, if it's help me with my quiet times that I might read my Bible more regularly. I mean, it's all predictable with the families. It's helped me with the kids.
Safe.
So it's totally safe what we share. You go to an AA meeting or to a recovery group or go to OO and people tell you what they're really like. It's very sobering in that sense. Sorry for the pun on this subject, but it is sobering to hear people actually speak honestly, and therefore they care for each other at deep levels that we don't necessarily do in Bible study groups. And that's what addicts need.
So what is needed is information. We need to understand addiction and have some idea of what is going on for those people. And the Overcomers Outreach website is the one to go to. This is the address. You go there to find the website. And that will give you the information. There's training available that could be useful for you, for members of your prayer and Bible study group or whatever. Check it out. Phillip Jensen, thank you for your time once again.
It's a pleasure, Kel.
And thank you for your company on The Chat Room.